The final bell echoed through the school, signaling the end of another day. Students immediately began packing their bags. Some rushed toward club activities, others gathered with friends. The classroom slowly emptied. Among them was Katsuzawa Kusuke. Like always, he packed up quickly. No unnecessary conversations, no lingering around, no standing in groups talking about random things. The moment classes ended, he was already heading for the door. From across the room, Saika noticed. Again, she had started noticing him more often recently. At first, she thought nothing of it. After all, he was the boy who fixed her bicycle. Naturally, she would pay a little attention. At least, that was the excuse she gave herself. But the more she thought about it, the less convincing that explanation became. Because even before the bicycle incident, Kusuke had occasionally caught her attention. She remembered seeing him during break periods. While everyone else chatted, played games, or scrolled through their phones, he spent his time drawing. Not doodling, actually drawing. Detailed layouts, structures, design concepts. The lines were so precise that they almost looked machine-made. At the time, she had only glanced at them briefly. Now, however, those memories kept resurfacing. Why? She couldn't quite figure it out. Her thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. Saika. She looked up. Miyasaka stood nearby, wearing what was clearly meant to be a confident smile. Unfortunately, it wasn't working. At least not for her. What is it? Miyasaka casually leaned against a desk. A new takoyaki shop opened near the station. Saika immediately sensed where this was going. And, we should check it out. A pause. No thanks. Miyasaka blinked. The rejection arrived much faster than expected. He recovered quickly. My treat. No thanks. Another rejection. Just as immediate. Several nearby students pretended not to listen. They failed miserably. Miyasaka's smile became noticeably strained. Why not? Saika sighed. Because explaining would take longer than refusing. I have a photo shoot soon. That part was true. Models had to be careful about what they ate, especially before important shoots. But there was another reason. One she didn't say aloud. She simply didn't enjoy spending time with him. The problem wasn't that Miyasaka was a bad person. He wasn't. The problem was that every conversation felt forced. Whenever he talked to her, it felt like he was talking to Saika the model, not Saika the person. There was a difference. A huge difference. Most people never noticed it. Kusuke, oddly enough, seemed completely unaware of her popularity, and somehow, that felt refreshing. Meanwhile, Miyasaka continued trying to salvage the conversation. But Saika's interest was already fading. Eventually, she offered a polite goodbye and walked away, leaving him standing there alone. As she headed toward the school gate, another thought drifted into her mind. Kosuke, again, the realization annoyed her. Why was she thinking about him so much? She barely knew him, yet somehow, he kept appearing in her thoughts. His calm personality, his craftsmanship, the way he became passionate whenever he discussed something he loved. The more she compared him to other boys she knew, the more unusual he seemed. Most students spent their energy trying to fit in. Kusuke didn't. In fact, he almost seemed disconnected from the social hierarchy altogether. Popularity didn't interest him. Trends didn't interest him. Attention definitely didn't interest him. Instead, he devoted himself entirely to creating things. And for some reason, Saika envied that. Because she wasn't sure she had something similar. Sure, she worked as a model. People praised her, admired her, followed her online. But none of it felt particularly meaningful. Not the way Kusuke's workshop seemed meaningful to him. When he repaired something, his eyes changed. When he talked about design, he became animated. When he discussed craftsmanship, genuine excitement appeared. That kind of passion was difficult to fake and impossible to ignore. Without fully realizing it, Saika found herself riding her bicycle toward a certain neighborhood, a neighborhood she had passed before, a neighborhood that seemed familiar. Several minutes later, she stopped, then froze, because she suddenly realized where she was, in front of Kusuke's house. Silence, a long silence. What am I doing? Even she couldn't answer. The realization hit hard. This looked incredibly suspicious. If anyone saw her right now, they would absolutely assume she was stalking him. Honestly, they wouldn't be entirely wrong. Embarrassment flooded her face. She considered turning around immediately. Then she noticed something. A sign near the entrance. Custom woodworking and handcrafted repairs, so this was the family workshop. Curiosity won. Just for a moment, she told herself. One quick look, nothing more. Peeking through a nearby window, she spotted him, and immediately forgot about leaving. Inside the workshop, Kusuke was completely focused on his work. The outside world no longer existed. A piece of wood rested on a large table. Tools surrounded him. Measurements covered nearby sketches. His hands moved steadily. Confidently, carefully, every motion served a purpose. Sawdust drifted through the air. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The scene almost looked like something from a movie. Saika found herself staring, not because he looked cool, not because she suddenly developed romantic feelings. It was something else. Admiration. Pure admiration. For the first time, she was seeing Kosuke in his element. This wasn't a classroom. This wasn't school. This was his world. And within that world, he seemed completely different. Confident, capable, focused, almost brilliant. Watching him work made her understand something important. Kosuke wasn't talented because he was naturally gifted. He was talented because he genuinely loved what he did. That passion showed in every movement. Without thinking, Saika slowly raised her phone. The moment felt worth capturing. Click, the camera sound echoed. Instantly, her eyes widened. A terrible mistake. Inside the workshop, Kosuke stopped moving. Slowly, very slowly. He turned toward the window. Their eyes met. Time froze. For several painful seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Neither knew what to say. Kusuke stared. Saika stared back. Then reality finally returned. And with it came overwhelming embarrassment. Saika's face turned bright red. Her brain short-circuited completely. What possible explanation existed for this situation? None. Absolutely none. I can explain. She couldn't. I wasn't stalking you. That somehow sounded even worse. Panic took over. Without waiting for a response, she grabbed her bicycle. Sorry. And fled. As fast as humanly possible. Meanwhile, Kusuke remained frozen. His brain struggled to process what had just happened. Did the school's most popular girl seriously come to his house? Did she take a picture of him? Why? How? What was happening? Before he could find answers, another familiar sound reached his ears. Clank, clank, clank. Kusuke immediately recognized it. The bicycle chain. Again, sure enough, Saika's bicycle came to an abrupt stop a short distance away. The chain had finally given up completely. Kusuke sighed. He had warned her. Several moments later, he walked over. Saika was crouching beside the bicycle, looking utterly defeated. When she noticed him approaching, her embarrassment somehow increased, which seemed physically impossible. Without saying much, Kusuke reached toward the damaged chain. At the same time, he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. The gesture wasn't romantic. It wasn't intentional. He simply wanted her to move slightly so he could inspect the damage. Unfortunately, Saika's brain interpreted the situation very differently. The moment his hand touched her shoulder, everything stopped. Her thoughts vanished. Her heart skipped. And suddenly, she became painfully aware of just how close they were. For the second time in 2 days, neither of them had any idea what to say. And neither realized that this awkward encounter was about to become the beginning of something much bigger than either of them expected. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Saika remained frozen beside her bicycle. Kosuke remained crouched near the broken chain. The awkwardness between them was almost visible. Finally, Kosuke broke the silence. "You should probably stop using this chain." Saika blinked. The simple statement immediately pulled her back to reality. Right. The bicycle. The chain. The reason she was standing there in the first place. Not the fact that she had accidentally followed him home. Definitely not that. I know, her voice came out quieter than usual. Kusuke examined the chain more closely. The condition was worse than he expected. Several links were worn down. Others looked close to breaking entirely. The fact that it was still functioning at all felt like a miracle. He stood up and wiped his hands. "This won't last much longer." Saika looked worried. "Can it be fixed?" Temporarily, the answer wasn't encouraging. Seeing her expression, Kusuke hesitated before continuing. "If you want, I can replace it." Saika's eyes widened. "Really?" Kusuke nodded. "My workshop has spare parts." For a moment, Saika simply stared at him. Then a bright smile appeared. The same smile that always seemed capable of overwhelming his defenses. "Please." A few minutes later, they entered the workshop together. The moment Saika stepped inside, her curiosity exploded. She had only seen it from outside before. The interior was even more impressive. Wooden shelves lined the walls. Tools of every shape and size filled the workspace. Half-finished projects rested on nearby tables. Detailed sketches were pinned to boards. Some looked like furniture, others resembled architectural concepts. Everything reflected years of dedication. Years of craftsmanship. Years of passion. Saika slowly turned in place. "This is amazing." Kusuke looked confused. It is, obviously, to him, it was just normal. To her, it felt like entering another world. A world built entirely around creation. While Kusuke prepared the replacement chain, Saika wandered carefully around the workshop. Everywhere she looked, she discovered something new. A handmade cabinet. A carved wooden ornament. A detailed model structure. Each piece revealed another side of Kusuke she had never seen. At school, he blended into the background. Here, his presence was everywhere. The contrast fascinated her. Eventually, she stopped in front of a stack of design sketches. Her eyes widened. The drawings were incredible. Every line was precise. Every measurement carefully planned. Some looked professional enough to belong in an architectural office. "You made these?" Kusuke glanced over. Oh, those. That response nearly made Saika laugh. Only Kusuke could react to impressive work as if someone had pointed out an ordinary pencil. "Those are really good. They're practice." "Practice?" Kusuke nodded. "I'm still learning." Saika stared at him. Once again, he was downplaying something remarkable. The more she learned about him, the more she noticed a pattern. No matter how skilled he was, he never acted proud. Almost the opposite. As if he genuinely didn't realize how impressive his abilities were. A short while later, Kusuke finished installing the new chain. The bicycle looked significantly better. More importantly, it would actually stay functional. Saika tested it briefly. The difference was immediate. "It feels brand new." "It's not." His answer came so quickly that she burst out laughing. "You're impossible." Kusuke tilted his head. "What does that mean?" "It means you're weird." Now it was his turn to look offended. "I fixed your bicycle." "Exactly, how does that make me weird?" Saika laughed even harder. The expression on his face was priceless. For someone who constantly overthought social situations, he could be surprisingly funny without realizing it. The conversation gradually became easier, more natural. Neither of them noticed how much time had passed. Eventually, Saika sat on a nearby stool while Kosuke organized tools. A comfortable silence settled between them. Then Saika asked a question. "What do you want to do in the future?" Kusuke paused. The question caught him off guard. Most people asked about hobbies. Very few asked about dreams. For several seconds he considered his answer. Then he looked toward the sketches hanging nearby. "I want to create things." Saika waited. Kusuke continued. "Buildings, furniture, designs, anything that lasts." His voice remained calm, but something else was there too. Conviction. For perhaps the first time, Saika heard him speak without hesitation, without self-doubt, without awkwardness. This was something he truly cared about. "When people use something I made," he paused, then smiled slightly. "It feels meaningful." Saika listened quietly. Something about those words stayed with her. Most students their age didn't know what they wanted. Many simply followed whatever path appeared easiest. Kusuke was different. His future wasn't completely planned. But he had direction, a purpose, a dream, and somehow that made him seem much larger than the quiet boy everyone overlooked at school. Without realizing it, Saika found herself admiring him even more. The realization caught her off guard, because admiration was dangerous. Admiration led to curiosity. Curiosity led to attention. And lately, she had been paying far too much attention to Katsuzawa Kusuke. Meanwhile, Kosuke noticed something unusual. Saika wasn't checking her phone. She wasn't talking about modeling. She wasn't acting like the school's most popular girl. Instead, she was genuinely interested in his work, his hobbies, his dreams, the things nobody normally asked about. For the first time, he began wondering if he had misunderstood her completely. Maybe she wasn't just kind. Maybe she was far more genuine than people realized. As the afternoon sunlight slowly faded, Saika finally stood. "I should go." Kosuke nodded. The bicycle was fixed. The conversation was over. Everything should have felt normal. Yet somehow both of them felt reluctant to leave. The feeling surprised them equally. Saika pushed her bicycle toward the exit, then stopped. Turning around, she smiled. A real smile, not the one she used for photos, not the one she used for social media. A simple, honest smile. "I'm glad I came." For a moment, Kusuke didn't know how to respond. Then he answered honestly, "Me too." Saika's smile widened. A second later, she left, this time for real. Kusuke watched her disappear down the street. The workshop suddenly felt quieter, much quieter, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he found himself staring at the doorway long after she was gone. Meanwhile, riding home on her newly repaired bicycle, Saika couldn't stop smiling. Because somewhere along the way, Katsuzawa Kusuke had become far more than the quiet boy from her class. And although neither of them realized it yet, their growing connection was becoming impossible for others to ignore. Especially one person. A person who had been watching everything from the shadows. A person whose jealousy was beginning to turn into obsession. Miyasaka, and very soon he would make his move. The peaceful days surrounding Kosuke and Saika were about to come to an end.